Welcome to our deep dive into the Ottoman Empire.
The Ottomans.
Yeah, we're using excerpts from the Wikipedia article to give you a good overview
Okay.
of this vast empire.
That spans centuries and continents.
Exactly. And get ready for some stories
Oh, yeah.
about powerful sultans and epic conquests and
That's
surprisingly
progressive policies.
progressive policies.
For the time, at least.
Yeah, for the time.
That's right. We're talking about an empire
Hmm.
that lasted from the late 13th century all the way to the early 20th century.
Wow.
It's a fascinating story of how a small principality in Anatolia transformed into one of the most influential powers in the world.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Sure.
The name Ottoman itself.
Right.
Where does that come from?
The name comes directly from the founder of the empire, Osman.
Okay.
He established his rule around the year 1299.
Okay.
And Ottoman is basically a historical anglicization of his name.
Okay.
His name itself comes from the Arabic name Uthman.
So one guy starts it all.
Yes.
But how did they go from a small principality to conquering huge swaths of land?
Well, Osman I and his successors were incredibly strategic and skilled militarily.
Yeah.
They started by expanding their territory throughout Anatolia, taking advantage of the weakening Byzantine Empire.
Right.
They won some key early battles,
Like
the Battle of Kosovo in 1389, which really weakened Serbia,
Mhm.
and the Battle of Nicopolis in 1396, which was one of the last large crusades.
Wow.
And it failed to stop the Ottomans.
It sounds like they were unstoppable.
Yeah,
These battles set the stage for one of the most important events in their history,
absolutely.
the conquest of Constantinople in 1453.
Yeah.
It must have been an intense siege.
It was a pivotal moment in history.
Yeah.
The Byzantine Empire, which had stood for over 1,000 years, fell to Mehmed II.
Wow.
But here's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
Mehmed II wasn't just about brute force.
Right.
He was smart and allowed the Eastern Orthodox Church to keep some autonomy, which actually helped him solidify his rule.
Wow. Keeping the existing religious institutions in place.
Right.
That was a pretty savvy move.
Yeah,
I can definitely see how that would help with stability in a newly conquered city.
of course.
Makes you wonder if that strategy could offer some insights for managing diverse populations today.
It's a great point.
Yeah.
It highlights the complexities of ruling a vast empire with different cultures and religions.
Totally.
Did it create lasting peace? Were there any downsides to this approach?
Yeah.
These are questions historians still debate today.
It's mind-blowing to imagine Constantinople as anything other than Istanbul.
I know.
It really drives home the magnitude of the Ottomans' conquests.
It does.
And the conquest didn't stop there.
No, they didn't.
This leads us to what's often called the Golden Age of the Ottoman Empire,
Yeah,
and a name everyone's heard of, Suleiman the Magnificent.
exactly. Suleiman ruled from 1520 to 1566
Okay.
and is widely considered the peak of Ottoman power and culture. Under his rule, the empire reached its greatest territorial extent,
Wow.
stretching from the Middle East and North Africa into the heart of Europe.
Wow.
He even besieged Vienna twice.
Vienna.
Yeah,
That's incredibly ambitious.
it was.
Pushing deep into Europe. It really shows how powerful the Ottomans were at that time.
Yeah,
But the empire didn't collapse right after Suleiman, right?
right. There's a common misconception that the empire immediately declined after Suleiman's reign.
Okay.
They actually maintained a strong and flexible economy and a powerful military for centuries to come.
Okay.
The period from 1566 to 1703 is often mischaracterized as one of decline, but it was really a time of adaptation.
Adaptation. What were they adapting to?
Well, new maritime trade routes that were opening up, thanks to Western European powers, posed a challenge to the Ottomans.
Okay.
They had to adjust their economic strategies to stay competitive.
Makes sense.
Think of it as an early form of globalization already having an impact.
It's amazing to think about those long-term historical forces at play.
It is.
So how did the Ottomans deal with this new global landscape?
They found ways to adapt and even benefit from these changes.
Okay.
For example, the rise of coffee drinking in Europe actually boosted Ottoman trade.
Wow.
Cairo became a major center of the coffee trade,
Okay.
highlighting their resilience and ability to find new avenues for economic success.
So they were resourceful,
Yeah,
but it couldn't have been easy navigating those shifts. I
right.
imagine there were internal challenges too, right?
Absolutely. The Solali rebellions, which happened in Anatolia during the late 16th and early 17th centuries, were a period of significant unrest and anarchy.
Wow.
They also had ongoing conflicts with the Safavid Empire and Persia, which led to some territorial losses in the east.
Right.
It shows that even powerful empires have to constantly manage internal and external pressures.
A constant balancing act, it seems.
Yeah.
But one thing that always made the Ottomans a force to be reckoned with was their military. They were known for being innovative and powerful.
Their military was truly formidable.
Yeah.
They adopted gunpowder and cannons early on, which gave them a significant advantage.
Right.
They also had a unique recruitment system, which included the famous Janissaries.
Okay.
These were elite soldiers who were taken from Christian families and trained from a young age
Wow.
to be fiercely loyal to the Sultan.
Oh, wow.
And let's not forget their navy.
Right.
They controlled much of the Mediterranean Sea for centuries,
Wow.
a testament to their naval strength.
Janissaries, that's a system I'm going to need to learn more about.
Yeah.
It sounds pretty intense.
It was.
But their military strength couldn't last forever, could it?
Well, by the late 18th century, they started to fall behind European rivals in terms of technology.
Okay.
This led to some pretty devastating defeats
Right.
and made it clear that they needed to modernize.
Mm.
It's a pattern we see in many empires.
Yeah.
Those who fail to keep up with technological advancements often face serious consequences.
And that's when we start to hear the phrase sick man of Europe
Right.
being used to describe the Ottoman Empire, right?
Yes, that term really reflects the 19th century for the Ottomans,
Okay.
a time of turmoil and reform. They launched a series of reforms known as the Tanzimat,
Okay.
aimed at modernizing the state, the army, and even society itself.
Wow.
It was a huge attempt to catch up with the rapidly changing world around them.
What kind of changes did these Tanzimat reforms bring about?
They were pretty sweeping.
Why?
They created a modern conscripted army, established a banking system, invested in education,
Okay.
and even decriminalized homosexuality.
Hold on. Decriminalized homosexuality in the 19th century? That's
Yeah.
incredibly progressive,
It was.
especially for that time.
Yeah.
It sounds like they were really trying to shake things up.
They were making some bold moves.
Yeah.
And here's another fascinating detail.
Okay.
Samuel Morse, the inventor of the telegraph, actually got an Ottoman patent for his invention.
Wow.
The Sultan himself even tested it out.
That's amazing. I never knew that. It seems like they were doing everything they could to keep up with the times.
They were trying.
But did it work?
That's where things get even more complicated.
Okay.
These reforms, while significant, also created new tensions within the empire.
Okay.
The Christian population, who often had higher levels of education, started playing a bigger role in the economy.
Okay.
This led to resentment from some Muslims.
Right.
It's a reminder that reform can be messy and unpredictable.
So even as they tried to modernize, they were still struggling with the challenges of managing a diverse, multi-religious empire.
Yeah.
It sounds like a lot to juggle.
It certainly was.
Yeah.
And keep in mind that empires are expensive.
Right.
They had taken on significant foreign loans, especially after the Crimean War,
Okay.
to fund their modernization efforts.
Kind of like taking out a huge mortgage.
Exactly.
It can help in the short term, but leave you vulnerable in the long run.
Exactly. This debt eventually led to bankruptcy and gave foreign powers more control over their finances.
Right.
They were caught between a rock and a hard place,
Yeah.
trying to modernize, but facing internal divisions and crippling debt.
So how did this once mighty empire finally meet its end?
Yeah.
What was the final blow?
In the early 20th century, a group known as the Young Turks emerged,
Okay.
hoping to revitalize the empire.
Mm-hmm.
They started a revolution in 1908, restored a constitutional monarchy,
Mm-hmm.
and introduced multi-party politics.
Okay.
It seemed like there might be a chance for a renewed Ottoman Empire.
A glimmer of hope in the twilight years. What happened next?
Unfortunately, that hope was short-lived. The Young Turks faced a series of disastrous wars
Okay.
that cost them most of their remaining European territories.
Right.
And then came World War I, which sealed their fate. They
Mhm.
sided with the Central Powers,
Right.
which ended up on the losing side,
Yeah.
leading to internal revolts and ultimately defeat.
The end of an era. It's incredible to think about the vastness of the Ottoman Empire's reach and influence.
It is.
We've covered a lot of ground in this first part of our deep dive,
We have.
from their origins to their fall,
Mm-hmm.
but there's so much more to explore.
There is next. We'll delve into the complexities of Ottoman society and culture.
Okay.
We'll look at daily life, the millet system,
Mm-hmm.
and how they managed such incredible diversity within their empire.
Okay. Sounds good.
Yeah. Welcome back to our deep dive into the Ottoman Empire. As we've been discussing their history, what really strikes me is the sheer diversity of this empire.
Right.
They controlled territory across 3 continents
Yeah.
with a mix of so many cultures, languages, and religions.
It's true. We often focus on the big events, the battles, and the sultans.
Right.
But I'm really curious about everyday life in the Ottoman Empire.
Yeah.
What was it like for the average person
Right.
living in this vast and diverse realm?
It was certainly a unique experience
Yeah.
to manage this diversity. The Ottomans developed a fascinating social and political system known as the millet system.
A millet system.
Yeah.
What exactly was that?
Think of it as a way of organizing different religious communities within the empire.
Okay.
Groups like Christians and Jews had a certain degree of autonomy. They could follow their own religious laws, run their own courts,
Okay.
and were even responsible for collecting taxes within their communities.
So like a system of self-governing religious communities under the umbrella of the larger empire?
That's a great way to put it.
Okay.
It's often seen as an early form of religious pluralism,
Okay.
where different faiths were recognized and tolerated. Of course, it wasn't a perfect system.
Right.
Non-Muslims didn't have the same rights as Muslims.
Right.
But the Ottomans were offering a level of protection and freedom that was pretty unusual for that time period.
It makes you wonder what modern societies could learn from the millet system.
Yeah.
I mean, so many countries today are grappling with how to manage diversity and create a sense of inclusion. Are there any parallels?
It's a really interesting question.
Yeah.
The Ottoman Empire definitely provides a fascinating case study
Yeah.
for understanding the complexities of managing a diverse population. Historians continue to debate its successes and failures,
Right.
and whether any aspects could be applied
Yeah.
to the challenges facing modern societies.
It's certainly food for thought, but you mentioned language earlier,
I did.
and that makes me curious as well. With so many different groups within the empire, what language did everyone speak? It couldn't have been just Turkish, right?
Well, officially, the language of the empire was Ottoman Turkish.
Okay.
It's a fascinating blend of Turkish, Persian, and Arabic, reflecting the many cultural influences within the empire.
So a real linguistic melting pot.
Yeah.
But did everyone speak this Ottoman Turkish?
It was used in government and official documents,
Oh,
but day-to-day life was much more diverse.
Right.
People often spoke their own native languages as well,
okay.
like Arabic, Greek, Armenian, or Slavic languages.
Oh,
You could find a whole mix of languages being spoken,
yeah.
depending on where you were in the empire.
Wow. Imagine the conversations happening in the marketplace.
Yeah.
In homes and coffee houses.
Right.
It must have been a rich tapestry of languages. Speaking of coffee houses,
Yes.
they play a big part in Ottoman culture, right?
Absolutely. Coffee houses were social hubs, places for people to gather, drink coffee, play games, discuss politics, and share news.
Yeah.
They were an integral part of Ottoman society.
And that reminds me, you mentioned earlier that coffee drinking in Europe
I did.
actually boosted Ottoman trade.
It did.
I love how seemingly unrelated things can have
Yeah.
such fascinating historical connections.
It really shows how interconnected the world was even centuries ago.
Yeah.
And that connection extended to the arts as well.
Oh, okay.
The Ottomans were known for their incredible artistic traditions,
Yeah.
which often blended Eastern and Western influences.
I've seen pictures of the Hagia Sophia.
Yeah.
It's breathtaking.
It is.
Such a beautiful blend of Byzantine and Ottoman architectural styles.
The Hagia Sophia is a perfect example.
Yeah.
It's a stunning symbol of the cultural fusion that was happening in Constantinople. And don't forget about Ottoman miniature paintings.
Oh, right.
They're famous for their vibrant colors and delicate details.
Yeah.
They offer a glimpse into everything from court life to historical events.
I can practically see those miniature paintings now.
Yeah.
So much artistry and detail. But as we delve deeper into Ottoman culture,
Yeah.
I also have to wonder, how did they view their own decline?
Right.
They were facing challenges, losing territory, falling behind technologically.
Yep.
Did they see it coming?
That's a question historians continue to explore.
Yeah.
For the 19th century, the Ottomans were clearly struggling to keep up with the West. Military defeats, economic troubles, and internal unrest were taking their toll. The sick man of Europe label wasn't just a Western perspective.
Right.
Many within the empire felt a sense of decline as well.
But they didn't just accept their fate passively.
No.
They tried to reform and modernize with the Tanzimat reforms,
Right.
didn't they?
They did. The Tanzimat reforms were a determined effort to modernize. They overhauled their military, introduced a new banking system, invested in education, and even made changes to the legal system. Taking inspiration from European models while trying to adapt those models to their own unique context.
It's interesting to think about, were they trying to become more like Europe, or were they searching for their own unique path to modernity?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's a simple answer. It was likely a combination of both, a desire to emulate some aspects of European progress while also preserving their own identity and traditions. The Tanzimat era is a complex and fascinating period in Ottoman history.
It seems like they were trying to navigate a really challenging path. They were modernizing, but also facing internal divisions, growing debt. It sounds like a lot to handle.
It definitely was. And remember, this was a time of rising nationalism throughout Europe. The Ottoman Empire, with its diverse population, was not immune to these nationalist sentiments.
So they were dealing with forces both within and outside their borders.
Exactly.
What a difficult time.
It really was. Despite their efforts at reform, the empire was struggling to hold on to its vast territories. Internal tensions were rising, and external pressures were mounting.
It makes their cultural achievements even more impressive.
It does.
The architecture, the literature. It's like they were creating beauty and meaning, even in the midst of so much change and uncertainty.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And speaking of literature, that's another area where the Ottoman Empire really shines. They had a rich and vibrant literary tradition, particularly when it came to poetry.
Oh, right. You mentioned their miniature paintings earlier.
I did.
So they had a thriving literary scene as well.
Absolutely. Ottoman poetry flourished for centuries, drawing inspiration from Islamic and pre-Islamic Turkic traditions, as well as Persian and Arabic literary influences. They had epics, mystical works, love stories, and even satirical tales. There was something for everyone.
Are there any particular writers or poems that stand out?
Oh, yeah.
Ones that we might still be able to read and appreciate today?
One of the most famous Ottoman poets was Fuzuli, who lived in the 16th century. He wrote in Turkish, Persian, and Arabic. And his works explored themes of love, mysticism, and the human condition. He's still widely read and admired today.
So even as the empire was facing decline, its cultural legacy continued to grow and influence future generations?
Exactly. And that legacy is what we'll be diving into next. We'll explore the lasting impact of the Ottoman Empire on the world. From the borders of modern-day nations to the cultural and artistic traditions that continue to resonate today.
We're back for the final part of our Ottoman Empire deep dive. We've explored their rise and fall, delved into their vibrant culture. And now it's time to tackle the big question. What's their lasting legacy?
It's a question with so many layers.
So many layers.
But I think we can start by acknowledging that for centuries, the Ottoman Empire was a major force on the world stage. They controlled vital trade routes, interacted with both East and West, and left a mark on everything from politics to art.
It's like they were at the crossroads of the world for centuries. What would we see if we looked at a map? Not just of their territory, but of their sphere of influence.
You'd see a vast network of connections stretching across continents. Their influence can be seen in architecture, music, cuisine. Even the way we drink coffee today. Remember, coffee spread to Europe largely through Ottoman trade routes?
It's true. It's a great example of how interconnected the world already was, even back then. But their political legacy is also something we can't ignore. Especially in the Middle East.
The collapse of the Ottoman Empire had a huge impact on the geopolitical map of the Middle East. After World War I, the Allied powers divided up much of the former Ottoman territory, often without taking into account the complex ethnic and religious makeup of the region.
So the drawing of those new borders, which often disregarded existing communities, had long-term consequences.
Unfortunately, yes. It contributed to many of the conflicts and tensions we see in the Middle East today. The Ottoman Empire's demise left a power vacuum, and the way it was filled has had a ripple effect through history.
It makes you wonder, what would the Middle East look like today if the Ottoman Empire had ended differently?
It's a fascinating question.
If those borders had been drawn with more awareness of the people living there?
It's a question that's impossible to answer definitively, but it's certainly worth pondering. And the Ottoman influence goes beyond just geographical borders.
Okay.
Their system of government, with its centralized power and the millet system of managing religious communities,
Right.
has also shaped the political development of some modern Middle Eastern states.
So we're talking about a legacy that's both physical in terms of borders and also ideological in terms of governance.
Exactly.
And what about Turkey itself? How does modern Turkey grapple with its Ottoman past?
For Turkey, the legacy is particularly profound.
Yeah.
The Ottoman Empire is the direct predecessor to the modern Turkish Republic. So much of Turkey culture, from language and food to music and architecture, has roots in the Ottoman era. To understand Turkey today, you really need to understand its Ottoman past.
It's like the Ottoman Empire is woven into the very fabric of modern Turkish identity.
It is.
And what about the less tangible aspects of their legacy?
Right.
The cultural exchanges, the blending of artistic traditions. How did those continue to resonate today?
The Ottomans were a bridge between East and West for centuries.
Right.
They facilitated a remarkable mix of artistic and intellectual traditions. They embraced influences from across their vast empire and beyond, creating something truly unique.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I'm curious, what are the key takeaways you hope listeners will remember about the Ottoman Empire?
I think the biggest takeaway is the sheer complexity of empires.
Yeah.
They're not just stories of conquest and power.
Right.
They're stories of cultural exchange, adaptation, internal struggles, and resilience.
Right.
The Ottomans, like all empires, had their moments of brilliance and their dark periods.
Yeah.
They expanded and contracted, reformed and stagnated.
It's a good reminder that history is never simple. There are so many nuances and contradictions. It's not just about dates and battles, but about the lives of real people, the choices they made, and the impact those choices had on the world.
Exactly. And it's important to remember that empires, no matter how powerful they seem, are ultimately fragile and temporary. The Ottomans, who ruled for over 6 centuries, eventually crumbled. It's a lesson for all empires, past and present power is fleeting.
It's a thought-provoking reminder for sure.
Yeah.
As we've learned, the Ottoman Empire was incredibly diverse. They brought together people of different faiths, languages, and cultures. What can their experience teach us about managing diversity and promoting tolerance in our own increasingly interconnected world?
That's the question I want to leave you with. What can we learn from the Ottoman Empire, both its successes and its failures, about creating a more inclusive and tolerant world in the 21st century?
That's a powerful question, and one that each of us can reflect on. We've only scratched the surface of the Ottoman Empire in this deep dive, but I hope it sparked your curiosity to learn more.
And remember, Wikipedia is just a starting point. If you're fascinated by the Ottoman Empire, there are countless books, articles, and documentaries out there waiting to be explored. Keep learning, keep questioning, and keep exploring the rich tapestry of history.